Greetings, everybody, from outside of Portland, Oregon. You can see here, that is Mount Hood, about an hour and a half outside of Portland. My name is Doug Zanger. I am senior editor for agencies at Adweek. Instead of me introducing our guest today, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. And Susan, we'll start with you. I want you to introduce yourself, and then here's the kicker. You need to tell me about the first project you ever worked on in your career.
Okay. All right. I'm Susan Credle, and my name was Susan Fowler when I did my first project of my career, and it was to sell socks made by DuPont. And I found this family in upstate New York who had, like, I don't know, I feel like it had 6 or 7 kids. They were all firemen. And I don't know, we did a print ad about their souls.
Wait, socks? DuPont, socks. So like rayon?
Yeah,
like
that
kind of, okay, all right. I'm
old
enough to remember.
Framed the ad and sent it to me, and I'm like, really? I don't know, it's frame worthy, but yeah, that was my first ad.
Yeah, well, some of my first work was for an adult bookstore in Portland, and that's something I definitely didn't want to send my mom. Fred, over to you. Your name and title and your first work that you ever worked on.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Fred Levron. I'm a worldwide creative partner at FCB. And my first brief was actually in Switzerland for a coffee brand called Nespresso. And it was, at one of those boardroom where you have the CEO of Nespresso that wasn't known at all, not even launched,
right?
Explaining us, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna create the first luxury brand that is a homemade, coffee machine, and you guys gonna launch it. That was pretty much.
When was that?
That was in 1996, something like that.
And to think that Nespresso has evolved into what it is today. That's incredible.
Right? And I mean, so many amazing things on that first, client meeting, because, saying that they would want us to build a luxury brand out of a home coffee machine was one thing. Explaining that we would, sell each pod few euros was just like mind-blowing. It was just such a different behavior. And explaining us that we would have to make 50% of our business through e-com in 1996 was pretty aggressive. So the first execution was shit because it took us like a bit of time to actually get there. But it was my first. That was McCann IPG still, but McCann time. And it was,
oh my God, that's so funny.
That's
you didn't walk
with socks.
No, I mean, we all have a thing.
Jumping off place compared to a print ad for socks.
The bottom line is we all start somewhere. We all have to start somewhere. And so you didn't walk in and say, I have this great idea. George Clooney and Danny DeVito. So no, that was many years later. That would have been a good one to lead with. Well, thank you both for sharing a little bit about that. And we're going to go through a few topics right now. And I'd like us to start with some of the award-winning D&AD work. And we'll go in order here. I'll walk us through. So we'll talk about the gun violence history book, Most Dangerous Street, and Go Back to Africa. What I'd like you to do is walk us briefly through the brief. That sounds funny saying it, but that's, that's what it is. And walk us through from brief to final product and looking through the lens of getting through some of the challenges. Because I think that in my experience, and to contextualize this, I'm a former creative director, I'm not actually trained as a journalist. One of the interesting points of creativity isn't so much the aha moments, but the uh-oh moments. The moments where you feel as though that you're getting stuck, or is this the right way to frame this? Is this really the right way to even message this? So I'd like you to walk through and remind everybody which agency, which office each came from. And we'll start with the gun violence history book. Susan, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Well, Chicago did the gun violence history book, and they've had a relationship with the Chicago or the Illinois handgun against violence. And this is, I think it's, Fred, it's been 6 years, I think, that we've been working
Yep.
on this particular piece. And, it's just what I've always said is that if we're going to commit to nonprofit and public service, you continuously commit to it. So you don't do one year of something and then say, yay, we won an award and we're done with that. So the brief is always to what are you going to do this year? And that's where it starts, is that, we always try to honor that relationship. And, I know there's some people that say, is it really making a difference? And I think that's a crazy question to ask, because I think you just keep hitting on it, and you don't know when all these micro pieces of communication add up to something very, effective. But the history book, to me, what I loved about it was, one, to start telling all the stories, but the kicker for me was that the stories and not repeating history could stop a bullet. And I think that, that's what took that idea over the top, is actually figuring out how much of a thickness of that book did we need to stop the bullet. Fred, you're day to day closer to it, so
I'm actually gonna give you because what you say, Doug, is so true about the creative process, and we all tell so many beautiful stories of like, oh, of course, it was just like, it makes so much sense, and it's so related, and it's so smart, it feels so easy. Actually, what happened on the gun violence history book, I remember it like it was yesterday. It's coming from Chicago, as Susan said. I'm in Lee's Taylor office, and we have that ongoing brief coming from ICHV, in which we always try. Obviously, we fail each time we do something because the problem is not solved, but we're not trying to solve the entire problem. We're trying to find creative ways to have a little impact, and you never know what execution will have, the most impact. So we always ongoing, creativity goes on that brief, and it's coming from an art director, and that art director comes with that simple idea of saying, actually, a bullet can do what we can't do. If we had to put all the gun violence in one book, it would be so thick that we would, the bullet, when we shoot the book, would stop, right in the middle of the book. So, like, craziness is like the history of gun violence in America can do what we can't do, which is stopping a bullet. And it was already, quite mind-blowing, but we were wondering, right, but what do we do with that? How do we go beyond, oh, that's cool, that's a nice, edgy, execution. And that's where, strategy, insights comes in. And most of the time, the story we tell is we found an amazing strategy and insight, and that led to great creative. No, and a very emotional idea, art directed led, started the process of thinking, what if instead of doing something for us, the grown-ups, the people that we're trying to convince on a daily basis, we were actually creating change, focusing on the next generation. And what if we were actually not creating an awareness campaign of something that would just stop you for a minute and you go on, but actually be a tool, something that could be used by parents, teachers, universities to educate the younger, the next generation, assuming that if we educate the next generation, the bigger change will come, maybe a little bit, down the road, but will come.
Right.
And that's how we ended up thinking, we need to make a book that will be used by the people who are actually transmitting history, transmitting the knowledge to the younger.
Right. We'll stay with you, Fred. The most dangerous street. Give us a run through of the brief, a
All
little
right.
bit about the project and the work, and how it got to the final project, going through all
So,
those challenges.
so the gun violence history, the most dangerous street. It's a very emotionally charged one because here is the fact. Just in the city of Chicago, there is the equivalent of a mass shooting every single week. Every 40 around 40 people get shot every single week, and every Monday morning, the city wakes up and you got the last numbers in the media, in the news, printed or just like talked about, and we all became completely insensitive. Like those numbers have no emotional power anymore. So our brief here was like, how do we go beyond the data? How do we go beyond the numbers? And how do we make us realize that this is not normal and we have to do something about it? And the idea came from a young creative team who got inspired by the theater shooting a few years back, and one of the ballistic picture when they had to recreate all the shooting, during the theater, sequence. And again, like it was a nice, art directed led, execution, but all the work needed to be done. Like, like we were like, okay, that's very powerful visually. What do we do with it? And the first step was to say, what if, we were putting all gun violence in one street? Would it be impossible to avoid or not? Because as we all go through our lives, it's easy just not to look, at the problem. When you go through one of the most, we did the installation in Lincoln Park in Chicago for it's very, you know where it is, the core of the city, very busy. When you do something like that, an installation like this, week after weeks, you cannot, ignore the fact. And the additional layer was to partners with the family, which was obviously the emotional aspect of the idea. Is like, how do you create very impactful work and be extremely respectful from, with the families too. So we partnered with the family to make sure each of the red beams that you see, when you cross them, tell the story of the person behind it. Tell the very personal story through the lens of a mom, a dad, a brother, a cousin, and this week after week.
Right. Susan, let's move over to go back to Africa from FCB 6. I mean, the first two projects and campaigns that you talked about, I think a lot of us really, really loved and valued. I remember first seeing this and going, oh my God, like this is subversive, creative, clever, smart, passionate, like everything you could ever hope for. Yet the construct and the concept is unbelievably simple. So walk us through this project. I think, listen, all the offices, obviously, clearly, FCB earned Adweek's Global Agency of the Year for a reason. But FCB 6, over my career, you kind of look and go, you again? That's interesting. So, so walk me through that one.
Well, it's interesting. First of all, FCB 6, when I first got to FCB, I had breakfast with Ian McKenzie, who is, leads a lot of the creative out of there. And he said, I don't want you to think of me as a performance marketing agency that's not creative. I want to be creative as, anybody in, any part of the network. And I was like, absolutely. And we put him on our global creative council pretty much immediately. And we were meeting on our global creative council, and we have a few tools that we use. One of them is called the 456, and it's sort of how we talk about the work. And when Ian presented this idea in progress, I would say, Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, but like 80% of the global creative council said it was a 1, that it was damaging and that not be doing this. And, everybody was a little like, holy cow, you're going to draw attention to this racist phrase, and highlight it and lift it up and give it exposure. And it was really interesting, because this is why it's so important to have diversity within your organization, because we had people that had a strong point of view about why this was okay. And we work with one of our head strategists is a woman named Vita Harris, and we've been working on a piece of benchmarking that helps us avoid damaging work, but also gives us the I think the positivity and the support to do things that are maybe on the side of it could be damaging or it could be very provocative. And we call them watch out words. And we have about 20 of them now. And we went through, when we heard the reaction to the idea, we sat down and we said, all right, let's think about this. Is this, does it hit any of the wow lists that we use to make sure that we don't put something damaging into the world? And it didn't. And in fact, it did the opposite, which is it took a horrific phrase and owned it and reversed its meaning. And I think it's the proudest piece of work that we've put out for me, because we could have just said, let's not go there. It's too scary. Why would we take the risk? And to see the agencies support each other and say, okay, if we're going to do this, how are we going to do this? Are we going to hold hands and make sure that we do it the right way? And then obviously the outcome, the industry, and not only the industry, but the world, spoke so positively of it. And it was a great lesson for me to don't, when you have that fear button pressed, don't just shut down.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
It was scary. And, it's kind of nice, because as a leader of a creative product, saying we're going to go for it, it was exhilarating. And just being smart about it. And, Six did a beautiful job, and it came from a truth, it really did. It wasn't trying to make something up. It was, like you said, it was so simple.
Let's move on to 2020.
Let's go to 2021.
I know, I'm schwitzing just thinking about it. Susan, let's stay with you.
Okay.
And looking back, what did you learn most as a leader? And specifically, what did you feel that you adjusted to well? And what were things that you didn't adjust to well? I mean, let's be honest. There are things that we can be all duckies and bunnies, and I live out west. We tend to be a little on the sunny side, but the fact of the matter is that there are things that we adjusted to and things that maybe we're still struggling with. So what did you learn most as a leader? What did you adjust to well, and what do you think that you can improve on?
Well, I would say that one of the things that confirmed that we kind of chose the right path of how to approach our jobs at FCB is, early on, Fred and I felt that collaboration around the network was going to be key to us succeeding, because we realized we needed to play team ball. I wouldn't say that we had any major superstars, I mean, we had great people, but none of these iconic, oh my God, so-and-so. And we're like, when I've read about winning teams in sports, it's usually the teams that work together that win, not the ones with one superstar. Every once in a while, but for the most part, it's team play. And so we started doing that 5 years ago. And, we said, if anybody at FCB does something brilliant, the value of all our business cards goes up. So it would behoove us to support each other, not compete with each other. And, a lot of companies think internal competition is what, gets people at their, to their best game. I just personally think if we help each other, we all get better. And
Right.
I think that this, recognition of the Global Agency of the Year comes out of team play. And so when this started, I actually think one of the things that we doubled down on and got even better with was being there for each other. And because of this, geography was removed and you could zoom in from anywhere in the world, we started, pulling players in to play on different things that I don't think if we had been in an office, we would have even thought about, who would be great on this project. So that was, I hope that we continue to do that, which is we know the people in our organization and to really think outside of geography when we're, solving a problem for a client or looking for an opportunity. That I hope we keep doing. I think the thing that I worry the most about is we twice a year meet as a global creative council.
Oh, right.
We've made that meeting so special. Like we figured out we need to be in a hotel that's small. So it almost feels like we dominate the space. It's remote so that it doesn't become a, meeting and then everybody goes out and, plays in the city with friends and catches up with people. So you're basically from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, you're doing something with colleagues. And I think that those two meetings in person are the reason we were able to work so well virtually. And I, we'll probably have to do virtual in February. And I worry that not being together, it will start to have an effect on how, we make work together. And so I'm ready to get back.
Or it could surprise you. It could surprise you.
I mean, we had a great virtual meeting in September and we designed technology for our meetings so that we would go really fast. And so, and we also designed technology so that we could have more people in the room. Because if you just are doing a, conversation, you kind of have to limit who can come to the meeting. But if we design technologies so that everybody can have a voice without having a voice, meaning you comment on the work and then we vet it and then we break into groups and work the work. That was done for a reason when we were meeting for real, but it actually came in incredibly useful when we had to do something virtual. We all knew how to use the tool. So, but it's kind of like what we've said about, working from home versus the office, where you miss things are in those, random hall conversations. And I would say in our GCC, where the most work gets done is, breakfast, cocktails, and people sharing, what are they up against? What do they need help with? So.
Right. Well, when you're ready to travel again, I got plenty of options out here in Oregon that are very remote. So we'll talk about that. We'll bring you out here. Fred, your thoughts, what you learned most, what you adjusted too well, and what you felt you didn't adjust too well. And maybe look through the lens of, maybe more personal, because I think Susan really covered organizationally. But what are some things maybe personally as a leader that you observed?
And I'll start by the stuff I struggle the most with.
Go ahead.
To end up on something positive.
That's very Jean-Paul Sartre of you.
That's so French. We always start with that, let's talk about what's not going on. Going well.
Right.
But listen, I think what's interesting in this period of time is, as leaders, is to show that we might struggle like everyone else. Like that 2020, nothing protects you. Whatever your privilege, whatever your title, whatever your position in the organization, everyone had to deal with so many challenges. And I guess my very personal one is I got 2 little kids and I got a wife, and when from one day to another you need to commit to the great transformation journey that we are on, and at the same time you need to be a husband and a friend and a teacher. That lasts very little. My wife just got me out of that
Mm-hmm.
The school that we created, at home, because I guess she wants our daughters to have a future. So great call. But yeah, man, what is challenging is if you're in that business, you must be passionate about creativity and building brands in a way or another. Like otherwise, I'm not sure what you're doing it. And we are very passionate, and I'm very passionate about ideas and creativity. So the tricky part with that process is we could go on 24/7, and there is
Right.
no day, there is no night, there is no morning or afternoon, there is no Monday or Sunday or Saturday, and more than ever, it becomes difficult, at least for me to draw the line between like time for yourself, time for your family, time for your wife or your husband, and time for work. And I think
Right.
and it's good to be able to talk about it, and as a leader to just like don't pretend that you have all the answers, and just open up sometimes, and that's when great support comes in. And it's one of the things that I think we succeed in that year is like, I think what we built, as Susan said, what we built earlier before the crisis revealed, who we are, who we truly are.
Mm.
And I think it's the case for us, but any other, companies or people. In 2020, maybe the one good thing about it is an amazing reveal factor. There is no place anymore for, talking big and acting small. You know what I mean?
Oh, gosh. And so much like 2020, I'm going to pivot. We had a couple of other things we wanted to talk about, but I want to, for the sake of time, I want to move to this one. Looking at 2021, talk about some of the plans, because I know that FCB has been continually building, building a culture. I was fortunate enough to cover what's been going on as it relates to DEI. So I'm curious about looking at 2021, some of the plans, and then we'll get to the ever-present predictions for the industry writ large for next year. But let's start with FCB specifically. What are you looking at in approaching 2021 and some of the plans? And I would like you to look through the lens of DEI, because I think that's critically important, and I think that FCB's done a nice job. Yet there's always room to grow. Fred, why don't we start with you, and then Susan, we'll have you give the last word on this one.
I think you said it, like, whatever we've done, it's not enough. And like we're very proud at FCB, of what we've been starting a decade ago already. That said, there is so much more to be done. You said something interesting about your background. You're coming from hip hop. I believe that we are obviously a creative industry, and our product is everything for us. And when you do a creative product for brands, you have that responsibility to be that bridge between the brand and culture, between the brand and the world we're living in. So, like, of course, our product needs to reflect the world we're living in. And how would you manage to do that without having, a team and a company that actually reflects the world we're living in? So, my answer to you is like, I'll focus on what I focus on a day-to-day basis, which is the work. Like, one thing we will do in 2021 is to make sure that our work reflect more than ever the world we're living in. And it means from a representation standpoint, but not only, also helping brands to own, a point of view about this, to have, a voice that, really, comes back to who they are and is true to their DNA, but also, is relevant with the world we're living in. So hopefully when you see our body of work, next year, you'll see an evolution like taking the work from 10 years ago until 2021.
Mm-hmm. Susan, over to you. And you and I have had some deep conversations over the years. Your thoughts?
Well, I'll talk about two things. One, we'll continue to, I think, press on into the conversations that we've been having the last couple of years, which I think are fairly important. Somebody, actually, I can say, Glenn Cole and I were talking about
72 and Sunny.
Yeah, about a month ago, and he said, somehow we got into this awards thing, and he goes, "Well, you're way into it, aren't you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "That's all y'all focus on is how to win awards." And like that, I said, it's so interesting. I think the reason we're winning awards and doing well in that world is because we stopped trying to win awards. And we started trying to do what we thought was the right work for the industry. And we're, as Fred and I said, we're about 20% there, but it's a huge goal of ours. And the goal is to do our most award-winning work on our biggest brands and to prove that creativity is an economic multiplier. Yep. And those two things, I think what happened in our industry is we did our best work on what I would call haute couture idea, spaces. So
but you getting all French with us now.
Well, yeah. I'm pushing. With a little Southern accent.
I love it.
But I think what happened is that when you did it on these very special projects, you couldn't prove that it was an economic multiplier because it wasn't doing anything. It wasn't solving a problem. It wasn't blowing up an opportunity. And so creativity as a word got devalued financially.
Yeah.
I think the C was like, I don't know what this work is doing for us. So we've basically said that we show up every day to make our clients famous. We believe that the fastest way to make our clients famous is to do great work on their biggest opportunities and biggest problems. We'll continue to do that. The other side of this DEI that I think is really important is that you can hire diverse talent, but if the culture doesn't help that talent grow, succeed, love being in the company, it's not going to work. So we continue to think about how we talk about culture. And again, this whole idea of collaboration and team play is so important. And one of the things that we've been exploring, which I find fascinating, is vulnerability. And then, there's a lot of that conversation about bring your full self to work, which is, that's great. But I think that what's more interesting is vulnerability. And how vulnerable can you be at FCB? And our goal is that hopefully you can be vulnerable all the time, that you can put yourself in a vulnerable situation. And what we've found, and Vita and I have been working on this a lot, and we actually did a project this summer or this spring where we all had to lean into vulnerability. And it was fascinating because what we realized is that the more vulnerable we were, the stronger we got, and the vulnerability turned into courage. And even our CCOs, their vulnerability was letting their teams do something without supervising them very much. And what happened is they were delightfully surprised at the outcome when the whole assignment was to be vulnerable. And I was like, so why wouldn't you do that every day? Why, if you love the process and you love the outcome, maybe vulnerability is something we should lean into. And I think getting to a point is that the more people that come to FCB and realize that we celebrate vulnerability, the more likely you are to bring your whole self. And I remember Keith Cartwright in an interview this summer said, I feel like I could have been so much better. And I mean, Keith is amazing, but he said he feels like it could have been even better if he had been allowed the thought of failing. He said, I, as a female, I felt this at BBDO. I felt like if I ever said anything stupid, that I not only was representing me as not very good, but all women, and so I edited myself until I felt like I had something really great to say. And there's a great creative exercise that shows why this is damaging to people. Is there's an exercise where when you get a brief, the first 30 minutes, come up with the very worst ideas you could possibly imagine.
Right.
And it's so much fun. It's so freeing. You just, you're just sitting there in stupidity, and it's a
Right.
blast. And there's no fear, and it's the ultimate fight against that negative part of vulnerability. And then what you do is you take whatever the worst idea was and then turn it into the best idea.
Right.
And they're so related. And so I think, that's one of the things that we will continue to talk about in our culture is embracing vulnerability in yourself and in your teammates. I think people have felt trapped and stuck and one hand behind your back trying to do stuff. And I think that the vulnerability piece, I think people are just going to put themselves out there.
Right. And your dog's name is?
Dix.
Dixie.
Look at that pop.
She almost made it through the entire.
Okay. Yeah, our little weirdo. I was just making sure she wasn't going to show up either. But no, listen, this is the way it is. That's a good way to end. She's beautiful. She's fantastic. Merci à tous. I want to thank both of you for being here. I want to thank D&AD for all of their support. And we hope you enjoyed this conversation. And we wish you the very best for the remainder of 2020. And we wish you nothing but great success in 2021. Thanks for joining us.